So welcome. This session is about tactical urbanism. In case you're not familiar with tactical urbanism, I think most of you probably are, we're going to be talking about some low-cost, low-risk, temporary approaches to transforming our cities. I like to think of tactical urbanism as ways to, introduce change to communities, get them thinking about innovative solutions to their problems that might be otherwise intimidating. I think we've all encountered projects where people are afraid of change because they think any change that we make to their communities is going to be permanent. Any money we spent is going to be spent on infrastructure that's never going to change in their lifetime. But I think we all know that's not true. These temporary projects can help us to really refine projects and get people involved in designing their communities. So today we have several different speakers to talk about different ways this has been done. But some things you're going to hear about are just the benefits of using these temporary projects, other than just the low cost. They're not always low cost, but they can be. There are other benefits. You're going to hear about just a lot of different ways that you can think about tactical urbanism and different types of projects. You'll hear a little bit about how these organizations have, gotten over the barriers they've been presented to implementing these projects. We'll hear a little bit about how you can measure the success of these temporary projects and how you might tweak them as you move forward into different phases, and how you might decide it should become a temporary or a permanent installation, rather. And then we're just going to have throughout some lessons learned from all these projects. So like I said, we have a variety of speakers. We have 3 speakers from all across the country, but they work on a variety of different types of projects. First up, we'll have Nate Hommel, who ASLA, who's the Director of Planning and Design at University City District in Philadelphia. He's also an adjunct professor of landscape architecture and heads the urban design studio at Philadelphia University. Next up will be Sam Rockwell, who is a project manager with Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Minnesota. And then thirdly, we'll have Nicole Underwood, who is from Phoenix, and she's the Director of Operations at Roosevelt Row Community Development Corporation, where she oversees the operations of the organization and aims to support the growth of arts and culture in downtown Phoenix. So if any of you went to First Friday last night on Roosevelt Road, you would have seen one of the projects that her Roosevelt Row CDC helped to start. So we will have a Q&A once the speakers are done. As you've probably seen, there's a microphone in the center of the room, so please just, when it comes to that part, just make a line at the microphone. At this point, I'm going to have Nate come up and we'll get started with our speakers. And I apologize, the font's a little weird, but it's only on the first slide.
Okay, hello, good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully you're fed and ready to talk about this. I'm Nate Hommel. I work for an organization in Philadelphia that's basically the western part of the city. And so if anybody's at all familiar with Philadelphia, we have 2 rivers, with the Delaware on the east, and the Schuylkill River kind of cuts right through the center. We are everything west of the Schuylkill River. And so 30th Street Station's our major transport hub. We have University of Pennsylvania, Drexel University. There's a good mix. There's also a huge mix of residential, and just a lot of stuff is happening there. We have, if this is the city as a whole, the big red blob is the employment core, which we call Center City. But the slightly smaller red blob there is University City. So we have a lot of the jobs in Philadelphia are in University City. We have actually 75,000 jobs. A lot of that's through the hospitals, through the universities. But so there's a lot of economic impact in our district. We are not a bid, although we act as one. So we're called a special services district. So we exist by the grace of our anchor partners, so Penn, Drexel, a couple other universities that are in the area, some real estate developers, and so we are very much based on donations, so we have to make sure everybody's always happy. We can't be a big, bad, angry team. We have to make sure everybody likes us and gets along. So one thing we do is tactical urbanism. It helps us build trust with people. And so what is that really? It's loosely, it's individual projects that make small places more lively and enjoyable. And that comes from Mike Lydon, the sort of spirit animal of tactical urbanism. But really, it allows for experimentation, and that's the most important thing. So it's a small project. It's something that you can tackle in different ways, and it allows you to play around. You don't have to have the perfect solution right off the bat. The other thing is it often leads to bigger projects, and so you can do a smart, small project first, and that leads to a bigger project next, which is more effective and a better use of the budget. For those of you that are unaware, the tactical urbanism started out as these readers. It's moved on to a couple different editions, but they just went around and collected what was happening around the country first, and then around Latin America, and now increasingly across the globe. A book came out a couple years ago, maybe a year and a half ago. If you don't know this, it's a really good way to get your head around things. It's really written for the sort of design, non-planner crowd to understand these things, but it collects a lot of this information. And so our biggest angle on tactical urbanism is perfect is the enemy of done. And if you wait around for perfect, it's not going to happen. And so this really started in Times Square, where they had this crazy idea of putting out some deck chairs in Times Square. They're going to shut it down to cars, low risk. Worst case scenario, they waste a little bit of money because everybody thinks it's a terrible idea, and a bunch of cars came and mowed down the chairs. But you don't know if it'll work or not. Well, it worked, and they say that people were scared how people just migrated out of the buildings and into this place that only was for cars. Well, okay, now it worked. What do you do? Well, let's make it a little bit nicer, and let's get some French tables and chairs. Let's get some paint and maybe some planters, but the planters are designed so that if cars hit them, they don't break, they just bounce, and we can put them back where they need to go, and so everything will be okay. Well, what if people really love that? Then you make it permanent. So anybody that's been in Times Square recently or seen pictures of it, it's looking more and more like this. But they didn't do this first. If they did this first, they probably would have been kicked out of office. And it's like, you guys are morons. What are you doing? But you slowly build it, and it makes a big impact. And you can do bigger projects in the end. I think that's the key here. And so pilot and temporary should become your favorite words. It mows through red tape. And you can just say, well, I'm just trying this for a little bit. It's a pilot project, or it's temporary, or the golden word is art, and that gets through approvals like you wouldn't believe. So the other thing is year 1, 2, and 3 scenarios. So you don't do this all in the first shot. You build on it, and you keep coming back to it. You learn from it, and you do something different the next year, and then the next year. So maybe by year 3, your original idea is sort of there, but it's not there year 1, because year 1 might be an utter failure, and you have to adjust so that you have year 2 to make it right. It's really important to think about that. And in University City, we do a lot of these different things. So Parklets, I'm sure everybody's familiar with Parklets. Pedestrian plazas, that's another thing that we're using to experiment with. And something else called social seating, which I'll go into a little bit later. These are all trust-building exercises. If we get these wrong, the city's never going to let us do other projects. But if you get these right, they start believing in you, and things start changing. And so decaying infrastructure, I'm sure everybody flew over some decaying infrastructure on the way here. We decided to build parks out of them. So we have these old bridges throughout the city. We do temporary activation of these spaces, and instead of doing massive projects that weigh lots of pounds, we do light things that are lightweight materials that can get on it and just start to activate these spaces. There's a 100-year-old bridge called the Market Street Bridge that cuts across the Schuylkill River, which is what divides Center City from West Philly. And it was a really wide walk. We found out that 6,000 people a day walk on this bridge because they're going from the main train station over to the employment center. But it's really not a fun thing to walk on. The Pope came to Philadelphia last September, and we were rushing around like, what could we do while nobody's looking? And we knew that people were coming out of the station to walk down to the parkway where the Pope was speaking. We were putting this up, and we asked a very specific person at Pennsylvania DOT, and he said it's okay. I had that in my back pocket while this was being installed. But the idea here was it was slipping in, and while they were building this, the crews would tell me, like, hey, everybody kept walking by saying, like, oh, it must be Pope stuff. Oh, it must be Pope stuff. Like, sure, it's Pope stuff. It's still there, and people love it. And it's changed it now. PennDOT has asked us to come in just before I came here they said they want to rethink how they're looking at their bridges, and are there ways they can design it so that it can accommodate these kinds of projects. The big thing about them is they're fully reversible in engineer speak. They can come off of the bridge without damaging the structure, and there's nothing anchored in, there's nothing, so it's these things that it's really changing perception of these. We have this, our biggest project to date is coming, it just got zoning approval the morning I flew in here. This is an old trolley portal, it's still very active. This is the busiest at-grade rail station in the city, but that long rectangle is actually where the trolleys emerge. In Philly, we have lots of trolleys. There's 6 different lines that come out of that tunnel, and it goes to all points west, but it's really just a utilitarian space, but you can see it's dense residential around it. Today, it's not a very nice place. It gets the job done. People can get on their trolleys. The headway on this is like a minute because all the trolleys are going into Center City. And so people come here from all over the place just because they know they can catch one so fast. Well, we're redesigning it, and we're making it more into a people space, but we're working closely with the transit agency to make sure it still functions for their needs. But we're turning into a public space, and we're adding a restaurant. We're adding a lot of vegetation. We're going to do some stormwater management. But this type of project couldn't happen if we didn't first succeed with the Parklets. And so if we went in with this project first, they would say, who are you guys? What is this? Why would we let you do this? This is crazy. People are just going to get killed by the trolleys. He's like, no, we kind of can make this work. And so a lot of vegetation that's building hopefully just tucks right in. This will go to construction soon. But this will be your new view from the shelters looking out. Much more pleasant. And we hope it starts to turn the tide a little bit on public transit. But we should back up a little bit. How did this all start? What am I talking about? So this placemaking stuff at UCD, where did it all come from? This was 30th Street Station in 2011. So this is the 3rd busiest Amtrak station in the country. And this is the view people got coming out of the station. And hello, Philadelphia. We have orange cones and parking, and it's just horrible. This is the beautiful view from the other side, looking west. And this is such a prominent space, we're going to park a dumpster truck right out in front of it. We said, let's just put some tables and chairs out there and some planters, and let's see what people do. And so we spent a little bit of money activating the space and doing something nice. We had to program it really hard because we didn't know what people wanted to do. There was no residential around this at the time, and so we did yoga and farmers markets and miniature golf, which, for the record, I thought was a terrible idea, but it worked. We had lounge chairs and beer gardens and farmers markets, and things failed. The farmers market failed. Nobody lived nearby. Office workers didn't want to go down to the farmers market and bring stuff back to their office and take it home later in the day. So, okay, well, I'm glad we didn't spend a bunch of money on a beautiful farmers market here because it seemed like that would be a great idea. It wasn't. We keep adjusting, and we won an APA award last year for our report on the use study of the porch. And so we just added some custom swings, and we added a lot more planters, but we do a lot of user surveys, and we find out people want more plants. So this is part of our process, and full disclosure, I am a landscape architect, and so I do like plants. But we do our pedestrian plazas. You can see this is what it looked like in the top left, barren wasteland. We just threw some planters in there, and it changed the perception. The city called to congratulate us on closing that slip lane. And we said, well, it's fine the way it is. Now you're going to have to rip that all up so that we can close that lane down and put curbs in. So currently it looks very much like the top left again without that slip road. We actually had a bus route rerouted to make that go away. But all for the better. We had another pedestrian plaza, simple stuff, just paint and planters. We took a 150-foot crossing and made it into 50 feet. And so these simple little things, but again, these are trust-building exercises with the city. Parklets are another big piece of what we do. A lot of you probably know this, but they started in 2005. Rebar, who is now Gale Studio, bought this crazy idea where they rented out a parking space and put down some sod and a tree. Said, well, anybody can rent a parking space, right? So nobody says you have to put a car there. That led to Parking Day, and I'm sure everybody's well aware of Parking Day. It's a very popular thing in Philadelphia. So in 2010, Parklets emerged in Philadelphia. They wanted to make these Parking Day things a little bit more regular and not just one day a year. Again, with the tactile urbanism stuff, they start collecting all these examples, and in 2011, UCD started, University City District, started using Parklets. And so our department director at the time had family in San Francisco, and she said, these are great. Why don't we have these in Philly? So we started adding parklets all throughout Philadelphia. The first ones are simple. They were linear. They had removable furniture so that people couldn't party on them at night. They could bring them inside, fine, whatever just lets this get through, we're okay. But really, really simple and modular. That's another key. Things have to be able to be scaled up. You don't have the final size. We didn't know what size would work. Turns out 40 feet is the ideal size, but we didn't know that at first. And so we had things that could be any length and still work. We made adjustments the next year. In 2012 and 13, we found out, well, we can add some more plants here because there's less of a fear of cars barreling through these things. And the streets department said, well, okay, you guys are crazy, but you're not that crazy, and so you can have some more plants around these, and that'll work. We said, well, we could add ADA accessibility if we do this, and they said, absolutely, that's wonderful, that's great. We added some more permanent seats, and my big thing sort of my closing remark at a community meeting is, and I'll take it away tomorrow. If you don't like it, we'll take it away tomorrow. So I said with the benches, don't worry, if it's a problem, we'll take them away tomorrow. So far have not been a problem. Last year we installed what we're told is the longest temporary parklet in the country, 60 feet long. And this is the evolution of all of our learning of parklets. So another thing I want to get into real quick is social seating. We wanted to think, why don't strangers sit next to each other like maybe they used to? What's wrong? What can happen in the design to make that different? So we came up with a design competition. We got a bunch of submissions. They were great. And we decided, well, the one we want to do is this one that they called Looped In. If anybody remembers the old Volkswagen ads, I asked our graphic designer, could you do something kind of weird that would make people curious? And so she came up with this, where it's what is this? And we had to teach people how to use these things. And so we wanted to use a lot of social media to make that happen. It turns out that people loved them, and they were a lot of fun. And I call them, these are our tactical urbanism nomads, and we can pick them up and move them around to different public spaces. This is if you're really hipster, you don't play bocce, you play pétanque. And so these are pétanque players just going around our looped-in seats. People love them. They're different things. These people likely didn't know each other, and it wasn't odd for them to sit right next to each other. It's really pretty great. This is my little girl at the time. She seemed to enjoy this. My older girl at the time was like, whatever, Dad. I don't care what you're doing. Again, my youngest one, she's the sweetheart, and she really loves this, thinks it's great. So kids are having fun, adults are having fun. We got a lot of design diagrams in from the architects about how this could work. And so when we took this to the city, they said, well, it'll just fall over. No, look at these drawings. It won't fall over. And look, it can be in all these different configurations, and we can just really change it up. But the biggest thing is we were told from people that they are super hot in public spaces that don't have trees or not real parks. So we said, well, why can't we build our own shade? And that's what we try to do. So again, they're funky, they call attention to themselves from far away, but we instructed the design team to not make them look too much like art, and then people would feel like they couldn't sit on them. So there has to be a good mix. Lots of fun photos, everybody likes this stuff. Social media has been really huge for us. That helps build awareness of our projects, and if you do funky enough things, people start liking that, and they have fun with it. And we moved it to a different place where kids started doing crazy stuff like parkour, jumping around these things. I don't know about this guy, if his ankles broke when he landed, but someone took the shot and it became a very popular thing on Instagram. I don't know that he had anything to do with this, but something broke. And we had, sorry, that's bad.
That's bad.
Okay. I don't know why. Do we have any tech help? Sorry. I will stand back. Look, right as I said damage occurred, I broke the microphone. So, people, you can't give up on stuff. You have to keep it, and you have to keep wanting it to be there. And so we brought it in, we got it fixed. Good as new. We moved it to a new spot, and you have to design things so that they will, if they break, you can fix them. And so they aren't monolithic things. There's stuff that comes apart. This came apart because of a union restriction. Our union employees could not lift more than 60 pounds at a time. I said, well, but two of them could lift 120 pounds, right? And so we had them designed so that 4 people could grab these, and it didn't exceed their their weight restrictions. I'll skip through this real quick. This is, we did other things, ugly construction fences. How can we make a difference? Well, could we put something up there that looks a little bit better than a construction fence, but it has to be modular, and we move it around, plants die, okay, we'll come back and we'll do a different set of plants, they live again, but you have to keep on them. You can't just think that the first thing you put in is gonna work. It comes apart, it moves to new locations, and it becomes this asset that now construction companies, when they're going to construction, actually ask us what, sorry, this is a little different than what I submitted, but they'll ask us if we can put this in front of their construction site so it looks a little bit better. We have other things like we do advancement of our social seating. I was at an art museum and they had this great wooden bench, terrible sign that says, "Please do not sit on bench." What? So, wow, this is all brand new for me. So we looked around the city and thought, well, what other places are doing this kind of stuff where there's wooden benches? I started designing some. Wow, this is like almost random. We came up with a couple designs for them, and we wanted people to vote on it. So we had option 1, simple, option 2, a little bit more fun. We had them both built, and we wanted people to vote on it and see what do they think we should go with. We had fun names like option 1 or option 2, but we thought, well, what if we called one the Will and the other one the Carlton? We're in West Philadelphia. Maybe people will get this. Blogs loved it, so immediately said, if anybody has Fresh Prince getting too deep into it, but someone said, is there an Uncle Phil one with a sweater? No, we don't have that, but people really seem to like the Carlton, which is simple and pragmatic and not going to offend anybody. The Will is a little more fun. I actually have a metal rail on it so that you could skateboard right on it and it wouldn't damage the wood. We let people vote on it. Got a lot of people coming in and telling us stuff. Somehow the Carlton won. But we want to build more of the Wills. We just don't have the funding for it yet. We now have 14 of these throughout our district. Really, really simple designs, but it works. Then we said, well, we can make it a little bit different, and we call them bus seats, though they're only at trolley stops. See if you can figure that one out. And there's little things that we secretly shame people. It says 10 minutes to City Hall. I have it on the pedestrian side, so we're not going to get the drivers. But the people walking, just take the trolley. It's only 10 minutes to get into town. So fun stuff, again, a lot of local materials. But the biggest thing I want to get into is evaluation. And so you have to look at these things and figure out what was working and what didn't work. You can't just assume that everything is working. We released a paper about a year ago on Parklets. It's a simple one, lots of pictures. If you want to download it, I have this listed again later, but we have it at bit.ly/UCD Parklet paper. I'll give that out again. There's one more time where it shows up. I'll run through it real quick, but we want to know who's using these and what are they doing and how long are they staying there. We knew how many people were on these Parklets. So, sorry, this is a little bit washed out, but we had on the average of 40 people at any given time were using some of these Parklets. There were over 100 people throughout the day that used these Parklets. This is where 2 car parking spots were, and now these are places in front of businesses. And so, percentages of seats occupied. This is great because it charts throughout the day. And so you can see, obviously, at lunch, it peaks, but then it dives back down. Then in the evening, other places thrived again. And so these were really acting as extensions of restaurants. So it wasn't true public space quite yet, but we're getting there and we're learning from it. Total unique daily users. This is the one at 140 unique daily users on this one Parklet where 2 cars, who knows how many times, there weren't 70 cars in each one of those spots during the course of a day, trust me. And so this is really driving business. People really like it. Average occupancy, at any given time, 5 or 6 people in these 2 different Parklets were actually sitting on them. And that's great. So they're always alive. There's a lot of stuff happening. What about people that aren't patrons? So a true sign of public space is that you just go and sit down with your sandwich from your apartment. You don't need to buy stuff from the place. It's not a cafe. Well, people were starting to get it. The Parklets that are around longer, people understand that they're true public space. And they go there and they bring a book and they don't have to spend any money. And that's where we really need it to be. Parklets are in the public right of way. They need to be public space. We looked at male and female, and so we're roughly even. It's actually slightly more male than female, and we always like to get that a little bit more female than male. There's a general feeling that it's generally a safer place if there's more females than males. And so we're trying, but we're relatively happy with it being somewhat equal. Median age, we looked at that. So who are the people that sit on these? We're in a university area, so a lot of it's 18 to 34, but there are other age groups that use these, and so we don't know if that's a product of the university. Is it a product of sitting in traffic? We're not sure on that yet, but we wanted to look at it and think about it. We wanted to make things that, again, appeal to all people, and so we asked everybody a lot of questions. We talked to the hosts about these parklets and said, what do you think, and what are people saying? What are people doing on these parklets? Well, most people were eating, is to be expected, but the second most popular thing people were doing is socializing. The least popular thing people were doing was sitting and staring at their phones. That's the least popular thing people were doing. So they don't go to public spaces to be antisocial. When people are out in public spaces, they are being social, and that's something we felt really good about. Another thing that you see in the talk, I feel like I'm going long, but the matrix that we have, where are parklets successful, where are they not successful? Biggest thing, high turnover businesses, coffee shops, taco places, things that are a lot of high turnover, don't have a lot of seating inside, and so people want to consume it quickly. Ice cream shop, picture that. How far can you walk with an ice cream cone before it starts melting? You want to sit and eat that really quickly. But little other things, like if there's a bike lane present, that really is irrelevant. It doesn't change people's opinion of the parklet at all. There's little things, and so I encourage you to take a look at this study on the matrix. If you are considering a parklet, find our stuff. There's ways you can do this without sort of let us be the guinea pigs that tested this all out. We have something that I think everybody can look at, and again, it's all pictures, almost all pictures, really easy to see, but again, that's bit.ly/UCD parklet paper, and hopefully you can learn anything you want about our parklets. And that's me. Thank you.